Hello everybody and welcome to another Unreal Engine tutorial. In this lesson we are going to be looking at more into doors, so following on from the previous basic door tutorial. So first of all we're going to show you how to fix this little issue that we had with the animation, where if you spam the key like that it sort of judders the animation. So we're going to fix that first. Then we're also going to look at how to make a couple of different types of doors. So we're going to do some double doors, and we're also going to do some automatic doors, like sliding doors, like you get on a spaceship or outside of a supermarket. Okay, so first of all, let's fix this little animation bug that we had with this. So if you get on your door BP blueprint, if you open that up, and you remember this is the code that we had last time from being able to press the interact button, checks if this variable is true or false, and then plays either the opening or closing movement, and then changes the variable to suit it. So yeah, the problem we've got is you can keep pressing this every time, and when you press it and it's already like midway through this, it tries to fire, it basically keeps trying to fire this continually, and that's what makes it judder. So what we're going to do is fix that, and the way we're going to do that is by first of all making a bit of space here. So you can use the arrow keys to move nodes across, by the way, if you've got them selected. First of all, we're going to use a node called a do once. So I'm going to drag off of true here and search for do once and add that in. So a do once node does literally, as it says, it'll fire this output only once. No matter how many times this is triggered here, it will only fire this once until the node gets reset. Okay, so we're going to need to set up a resetting condition as well, so that otherwise we'll only be able to open and close the door one time. We're going to need to do once on this line here as well, so you can do the same as before and drag off here, or you can also hold down the O key on the keyboard and left click, so O for once, and click, and that will add a do once node. I'm going to plug in that into there and that into there. Okay, so we've got our two do once nodes. I'm going to move those a little bit closer. Okay, but as I said, we need something to reset these do once nodes. So to do that, we're going to create a custom event. So creating a custom event is very, very simple. You can just right click in a blank space and search for custom, and you'll see pretty much the first thing that shows up is add custom event. So if you click on that, and this will give you this little node here, and it'll ask you to rename it to something appropriate. So I'm going to call it reset door. Okay, so this event is reset door, and then we're going to plug this into reset on the do once here. We also need to plug it into the reset on the do once here. However, you might notice when we do that, the wire swaps over instead of having two. And that's because you're not allowed to have like two event wires coming out of one node, coming out of one output like that. So it's a bit annoying, but there is a fix for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a sequence node instead. So to create a sequence node, you simply just click and drag, and then search for sequence, and you see it's this one here. You click sequence, and you get this little node here that has then 0 and then 1. This basically splits this event line into multiple outputs so that you can plug it into several different events, different nodes at once. You can have as many pins as you want, I believe, on one of these, but as you can probably tell from the way it's named, it says then 0, then 1. It does actually fire these one at a time. So it'll come through here, then fire then 0, and then after then 0 is fired, it'll fire then 1. It does do this very, very fast. It does it in a fraction of a second. So you're not going to notice that it does one after the other. It'll be too quick to see. But just so you know, it does do it that way. Okay, so we've got that here, which is fine. And then it goes through, sets the variable and things. However, what we're not actually doing is triggering this event to fire. Nothing is setting this off. So to fix that, we just need to go to the end of our line of code. So after the door's played its relative animation and it's set the variable back to whatever it needs to be, we then want to reset the door. So if you just drag off of here and search for reset, you'll see that that custom event we made is now here in the list. So reset door, click on that, and then click on the white execute pin and plug that into there. And there we go. So either way now, whether it plays the opening or closing animations, it will then go through and trigger reset door, which will reset this event, which allows us to use these do onces again. However, what this should do then is stop us from being able to spam the button. So now when we press the button for the first time, it will run through, play the animation, but if we keep spamming it, this event's only going to fire up to the do once node until it's finished playing the door animation. So we should now lose that little glitch that we had. So I'm going to save and compile. I'm going to go back into the level and just give it a quick test. So I'm going to walk up to it and I'm going to spam the E key. Yeah, as you can see, it now fully plays the open and close animations. It doesn't stutter anymore, which is good. Okay, so that's that little bit fixed. So let's move on to looking at other types of doors that we can make. So we'll start off by making basically the same door, but a double set. So a set of double doors that open on a hinge. Now we could create a new blueprint from scratch, but I feel we'd just be having to repeat a lot of the steps that we did in the previous video to make this. So we can actually save some time by duplicating this blueprint. So if you right click on it and choose duplicate, then we're going to rename it to double door BP and then open it up. Okay, and you see it's an exact copy. It's got all the same code. It's got the event here that checks if the player is within the trigger box and enables or disables the input, and it's got all this code about opening and closing. So we're going to need to do a bit of modification to this, but first of all, let's actually make it look like a set of double doors. So we'll go over to the viewport, and we then need to start changing these. So first of all, it's going to be double doors, so the door frame is really going to need to be twice the width that it currently is. So looking at the Y on the scale there, it's at 1.45. Let's just round it up to, let's double it and slightly round it off, so it'll be 3. So we're going to make it 3. Now you've noticed it's scaled up, it's made it wider, but it's also made the door that's inside it wider as well, and that's because the door is parented to the door frame. So anything that happens to the door frame also happens to the door. But we can easily solve that problem as well, and that's simply because we doubled the size of the door frame. If we halve the size of the door should then fill half the space. So 0.5 in the y-axis on scale, and now we see the door is taking up half of the space. However, we are obviously going to need another door. So what we're going to do is right click on this door and duplicate it, and it's called door 1. Okay, so we also need to now maneuver and position this door so it's on this side. So if you click and drag, you can see you can move it, you can place it there. Now that's now at -45 in the Y, so you need to bear in mind that that is going to become important when we sort out the movement for the door. So we also need to turn this door around. So in the Z axis, I'm just going to type 180, and that has now flipped it around. Okay, so now if you notice, this is at -45 and 180 in the Z axis of rotation, and this door is at 45 in the Y, +45, but 0 in the rotation. So those numbers are going to be important. So let's go back into the event graph, and then let's sort out the opening and closing animations. So we've currently got this move component 2 node moving the door. So your first thought might be, oh well, okay, we've got door there, why don't we just put door 1 and put that on as well? The problem is, as you can see, it only allows you to plug one component into one of these nodes. And unfortunately, as far as I'm aware anyway, if anybody does know that you can do this, please let me know. But as far as I'm aware, you cannot, you know how we did a sequence node here, there's not a similar thing that you can do with like an actor reference like this. So what we're going to have to do instead is just have another set of move component 2 nodes. Okay, So I'm going to select these bits of code here and move them down to make some more space. And I'm going to get this move to component 2 node and duplicate it with Control W. I'm going to position it just underneath, and I'm going to connect door 1 into the component. And we're also going to need to move this stuff across a bit as well. So let's highlight this section. So we need a little bit more space here because we also need a sequence node here. So if we drag off and do a sequence, and then connect the second output there into the other move component 2 node. So we now have, running through this event, this will then fire that and that. We don't need to connect that to there. We can do, but there's no actual need because it's going to play both of these together. So this is going to fire anyway, regardless. So we don't need to do that. We do need to just make sure we do the same for the other animation as well, though. So I'm going to copy that move component 2 node, and I'm going to get door 1 and plug that into there. Get a sequence node here. Plug that into there. Okay. Now, the other thing that we're going to need to change, though, is the coordinates. Now, remember I said the coordinates are going to become important. So, at the minute, relative location is 45 for the original door. That's fine. That hasn't changed. Door 1, though, is not sat at 45 in the Y. It's actually sat at minus 45. So we need to put in minus 45 here. If we didn't put minus 45 in, what would happen is when the door plays the animation, the door will actually move across to the other side of the door frame to match up where the original door is. So we don't want to do that. So make sure that is in minus 45 in the Y-axis on the target relative. Further down on the other door 1, again, door 1 should be at minus 45. So do that. Rotation as well. This is probably going to be different because the original door opens to 100 in the Z-axis. Actually, that should work. That should work. We'll try it, and if it needs fixing, we'll change it. Okay, so let's give it a try and see what happens. So first of all, we need to actually drag one of these out into the level. Oh, one more thing I didn't notice actually. If we go back into the double door blueprint, into the viewport, you'll see the trigger box that the player has to stand in is a little bit thin on the double door, that you have to be pretty much stood in the center of the doorway to be able to open it. So let's just make that wider. So I'm going to just click on that box and let's double it. So the Y-axis is 70, so let's make it 140. There we go, so it's now doubled. So as long as the player is stood in front of the doors, they should be able to open. Okay, let's give that a quick try. So we're going to walk up to it, press E. Hey, they both open the right way. Now let's see if they close correctly as well. Press E again, and they don't. So that's what I thought might happen. So yeah, we've now got both doors matching up like that. So we need to change the rotation on the other door. So let's come out of that. Okay, so it is actually going to be with door 1. This one needs to be, you can have a look in here to see what it should be. It's going to be $80 in the Z. Let's try that. So this is the door opening animation. Oh no, wait a minute. That one's fine. Sorry, it's the closing that's the problem. The closing animation sending it back to the wrong place. So if we click on door 1 here, the rotation look is at 180 by default, whereas in here on this move component 2 node, it's actually setting it back to 0. So we need to actually make that 180. So make sure on that move component 2 node that the Z rotation is set to 180. Let's give that another quick test. So they open and then they close. There we go. but that's fine. And again, the spamming code is still there, so we haven't got any animation glitching. That's good. Okay, so that's a basic set of double doors. Now let's have a look at making some sliding doors. So we're going to need, first of all, to duplicate this blueprint again, so we don't need to put in the door frame and make the doors, etc. again. So if you right click on your double door blueprint and duplicate it and call it sliding door underscore BP, and then open that up. Okay, so now we've got this open. We can do what we need to do to make it a sliding door instead. And that really is just a case of keeping the rotation the same, but changing the location instead. So on here, we're going to set door rotation to 0 and door 1's rotation to 180. So they're not going to change. And then the same, you make sure they're the same up here, so 0 and 180, so that's correct. What we are going to do though is change the relative location this time. Now, these two move component 2 nodes here are the ones for the door opening. So this is where the coordinates here are where we want the door to be open. So let's have a look in the viewport at where we'd need to move them to. So if we select the first door, and if I click and drag this across, let's say to about there, and then look at the value. Okay, 83. Okay, so 83 seems to be about right, because I don't want the door handle going through the door frame, you know, like that. So we'll leave it sort of there. 83 will be fine. So let's undo that, which in theory should mean that if we the other door should then be minus 83. Yeah, okay. So in the event graph then, we need to set the opening position there to be 83 for door, and then minus 83 for door 1. And these should stay the same now, so we shouldn't need to change those because that's setting the doors back to their original location. Okay, let's hit compile, save. Let's also put a copy of it into the world and give it a little test. So walk up to it, press E. Yep, that'll look good. Yeah, there we go. So that's the sliding door working just fine as well. And again, the spamming code works too, so you can't spam them either. Okay. That's just fine. Okay. So, we're also going to look at doing, let's do a automatic sliding door like you would get on a, on a spaceship, or in a supermarket or something like that. So one that detects the player and opens automatically. Now, this is going to be slightly different to how we've been setting them up previously, because this one is not going to be based on a button press. This is going to be based on the player's proximity to the door. So it needs to be set up slightly differently, but I'll go through this with you. So we need to, first of all, let's duplicate the sliding door blueprint. So right click on it in the content browser and duplicate, and do call it automatic sliding door underscore BP. There we go. So automatic sliding door, and open that up. Okay. Now this is going to work very differently. So we actually don't need any of that code. So you can delete all that. Okay, and then we also don't need the enable input, the player controller, or the disable input. Let's get rid of those as well. Okay, we do still need these though, the begin overlap and end overlap, because obviously they are the things that detect if the player has entered that trigger box. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to have to do this how we used to do doors before having the move component 2 nodes. But the reason we're doing it that way is because the animation will actually play a lot smoother using a what we call a timeline, and it will just generally work. It'll be a lot less buggy and sort of glitchy if we do it this way. So let's do a timeline. So off of here, off of the begin overlap event, cast a first person character. Off of here, we need to first of all add a timeline. So if you search for timeline, you should see the function called add timeline. I just happened to auto save at the wrong moment. I'm going to name the timeline door animation. Okay, so we actually want this line really needs to be plugged into. Actually, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, plugged into play. Sorry, that's going to be okay. What we don't want is it being plugged into play from start, because that would make the animation jump, because it would play the animation from the beginning every time. However, we do also want on the end overlap, when the player walks out of the box, we actually want this animation to play backwards so the door closes again. So plug that into reverse. Okay, now we need to actually make a float graph as a reference for the animation to play. So if we double click on the timeline node, that brings up a new little window like this. Okay, and there's not much in it at the moment. However, if we look at the top, you can add a few different types of tracks. There's a float track, a vector track, a color track, and things like this. But we just want a float track. So if you click on the one that's got the F symbol on it, and that will add in a new track or movement. For example. Okay, and this is a graph, so going across left to right, this is the time. So it starts at 0, and you can see here it goes 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, 1. So this section here, up to here, this is 1 second in time. We need to add in a couple of points for this to use. So if you hold down Shift and then left click, that'll add a new point. And then Shift and left click again to add a second point. And you'll see we're now getting this like graph line that goes between the 2 points. If you click on the first point that you made, you can see just here, you can edit the time and the value of that point. So you can basically edit like where it is. You can click and drag, but we need to be quite specific. So we're going to type it in instead. So I'm going to click on time. I'm going to put that to 0. And I'm going to click on the value and put that to 0 as well. So now you see the dot is exactly there. So 0, 0. The other point though, click that. I want time. This is the ending point for the animation. So we want this to be the time for this to be however long you want the door to take to open. So I'm just going to go for 1 second. If that's too slow or too fast, we can change it later. But I'm just going to set it to 1 second for now. The value as well. The value needs to be 1. Okay, and the way this is going to work is that it's going to set the value of the door. It's going to read the value as the door being closed or open. So 0 on the value is the door being shut. 1 on the value is the door being fully open. So hopefully this will make a bit of sense. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. You can actually, if you want to frame up your graph on the screen, you can use these two icons here, which says zoom to fit horizontal and zoom to fit vertical. That will make the points fit either way. Okay, so now we're going to select both of these points, and what I'm going to do here is right click on one of the points with both of them selected, right click on one of the points and choose auto. And you'll see now the graph has got a bit more of a smoother curve. That'll just make the animation a bit nicer. It just rather than it just being very sort of robotic, it will sort of it will open a bit smoother. It will just look nicer, okay? So the other thing we're going to do is also tick the use last keyframe tick box there. And that just means that it will consider the animation completed whenever it gets to the last keyframe, which is currently that. Otherwise, it will basically play whatever is in the light grey area. But yeah, just tick use last keyframe, and that will solve that problem. If we go back to the event graph now, you can see now we have this extra output that wasn't there before, this door movement, and that's because I named it door movement. And this is literally the output of that float track that we made. Okay, so I'm going to just extend this comment box a bit further. Okay, so what we need to do then is off of the door movement, you drag off of here, and I want you to search for a lerp, L-E-R-P, and it's a lerp vector is what we want. Okay, and what a lerp vector does is it will move something from point A to point B over the course of the timeline, and it will consider the value of 0 on that float track is considered point A, and the value of 1 is considered to be point B. So whatever we put in here is where it will move it. So we remembered from the other sliding door we did that, let's say we'll do door, the original door first. So door, that one was 45 in the Y, was its starting location. That's its default spot in the door frame. It was at 45. Its ending location when it's open was 83. So I'm going to put 83 in B. So over the course of the timeline, so 0 is going to be 45, and then 1 on the on that graph is going to be 83. So it's going to move it between 45 and 83 over that time. Okay, and we finally need an actual component that's going to, we need a node that's actually going to move the door. So this is just the values here. It's not actually doing anything yet. So if you get door, drag it in, and then drag off of the door output and search for set relative location. So there, set relative location. And then plug in return value, the yellow return value, plug that into the new location input there. And then connect update across into there. Okay, so that'll work then. That's going to work for that door, but we also need one for door 1 as well. So what we can do is we can duplicate set relative location, but this time plug door 1 into it instead. And then we can connect this white wire across, make sure that's connected, otherwise this won't fire. But we also need another lerp vector node. So if you click on that lerp vector node there and do Control W to copy and paste it, and put it here, plug the return value into there. We need to change the values here. So this will be minus 45, and then this one will be minus 83. So make those changes there. But we also need to make sure that alpha is plugged in to door movement. So grab that and plug it in there. Okay. There's a little trick for tidying up some of your wires as well. So you see how this green wire is coming and sort of cutting through here. If you wanted that to look a bit tidier, if you hover your mouse over a wire and double click, it will make one of these little reroute nodes. Sorry, and I can click and drag on these and move them wherever I need them. So I'm going to put this over here and then maybe just move that node up a little bit. There we go. So now I've got no more crossing wires. That's just if you like your code to look a bit neater. Okay, so we now have this one moving door 1 and this one moving, this one moving door 1, this one moving door. We've got the coordinates all put in there, and this is going to be, if we enter the trigger box, it's going to play the animation forwards. And if we exit the animation, exit the trigger box, it's going to play the animation backwards. So what that should mean is that the door will open, but if we move out of the trigger box before the door's fully open, it will basically just sort of stop and start closing instead. So it'll just like play backwards. So let's give that a little try as well. So bring a copy into the world. Tell you what, we'll position this one sideways like that. If we walk up to it, opens, walk away from it, closes, open, close. And you see how it just sort of stops in its tracks and closes again. There we go. So again, this is very handy if you're doing a like a sort of a sci-fi environment with a like on a spaceship. You can have the doors sliding open and closed without having to interact with them at all. Okay. So you could also, if you wanted more of like a vertical door, rather than sliding sideways like that, if you wanted it to actually open, sort of the door could like lift up like a blast door or something like that. Again, you do it in exactly the same way. It's just instead of doing y-axis, you could do. Let me just show you. So need to make sure we keep y the same, so it doesn't change the door there. But we could just do z-axis instead. So let's make that like, 0. So the z-axis in B, let's make it like 200. Now the door instead should slide upwards instead of sideways. There you go, you see? It just depends what kind of door you want. I'm just going to set those back to what they were. Oops. 83. Minus 83. And that one's 0. Okay. Just double check, make sure that's still working. Yeah. Okay, there we go. And yeah, so that's it basically. There's several different types of door there. So you've got your typical hinged single door. You got hinged double doors. Then you got sliding doors, and then automatic sliding doors. So there's just several different types of door that you can have in your environments there. I think that's all I'm going to go into today. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this really helped with your projects, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.